Hi, I'm Billy Keels, the host of the Going Long podcast. Every week, I'm going to be here interviewing the absolute best in the business as it relates to real asset investing, as well as real Main Street investors. We're going to be having conversations where you can listen in, and that's going to help you to continue on your path to education so that you feel much more comfortable as well as confident in investing long distance. So make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Make sure that you're liking it as well, because that way you can get every single episode as soon as it comes out. And by the way, don't forget to leave today's episode a 5-star review. Let's go ahead and listen to today's conversation. Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to share tips and strategies with you that are going to help you to be much more comfortable and confident so that you have more control when it comes to investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels. And guess what? If you've ever wanted to know what it was like to go from being a Brew-Master to a wonderful business owner of real assets, then guess what? You're going to want to stick around to the very end of this conversation, because today is going to be really, really, really action-packed. Because today's guest is not only a successful corporate employee, he started his first business when he was 14 years old. Yes, I did say 14 years old. He was also a partner in a brewery, and he's helping investors today by sharing his passions on the benefits of tax strategies, cash flow, as well as financial freedom. And he's also the founder of BMD Investment Group. Today's guest is Mr. Ben Dickey. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Billy. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, really looking forward to today's conversation. I am positive that this is going to be an awesome value-added episode for everybody. So hold on, everybody. This is going to be awesome. Ben, before we even get started, well, I guess we already kind of got started, but I want to know a couple things because everybody really wants to know, like, what city are you in now?
Yes. So we moved to Oklahoma City. And for those in Europe that are not familiar with Oklahoma and Oklahoma City, we are in the direct center of the United States of America, just north of Texas, which is the largest state in the United States. And we are traditionally thought of as the oil and gas kind of capital of the United States. And I live in the direct center of the state in the city's capital.
The center of the center. Awesome. Ben, really looking forward to this. And thanks for painting the picture for us. That always helps a lot. Listen, Ben, also second question, and then we're going to start getting into more of your story. Help us understand, what is the most positive thing that's happened to you in the last 24 hours?
Oh, Billy, yesterday was my son's 3rd birthday, and we had a great day. We got to wake up, open a few presents, go to the pool, hang out, and then just played with him all day. And it was an awesome day.
Awesome. So your youngest child's birthday yesterday. So that's awesome. Hey, Ben, by the way, how many kids do you have?
I have 3. Oh. 3 little boys. So I always say, hopefully they'll all play outfield for the Kansas City Royals, and then that'll be my retirement package. But if not, we got some alternate plans.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Cool. So Ben, you've helped us understand where you are, some of the great things that's happened to you in the last 24 hours. Before we get started and start jumping into a lot of what you've been doing, some of the things I highlighted already, give us a sense of, who is Ben Dickey? What are some of the things that you've been doing in your journey as a real estate entrepreneur, investor, syndicator?
Yeah, so I am a healthcare executive. I work for a Fortune 500 company. I am also an investor. Really, up until 2014, I'd spent most of my time investing in the stock market. Starting about 2014, we decided to start investing in what we call real assets and real estate. And then we have been growing that portfolio and our investors really ever since. So,
wow. So you started doing the corporate thing, you're in the stock market, then you moved from there into some of the real assets. Help us understand maybe a little bit about your background as well. Like, what are some of the things that you studied that kind of got you right into the stock market? Why did you go into the stock market, I guess, is probably the biggest thing. And then there's a couple different questions we're going to ask you from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up, I went to actually Oklahoma State University. I studied finance and economics, and really learned, really modeled the behavior of what I saw from my parents. They had gone to school, got a job, worked hard, invested in the stock market, and there's nothing wrong with that. But so it was really all that I knew. However, I'd been through several roller coasters with the stock market. I'd saved a lot of the money for college, and I had that money in the stock market. And then that was right during the dot-com bubble. And we saw the stock market take a pretty big hit right there about 2000. And then fast forward to 2008, we also saw the stock market take a pretty big hit. And one thing that I started to realize pretty quickly was that, if you lose 50% of your portfolio value in the stock market, so if you had $100,000 in stock market and it goes down to $50,000, you've got to make 100% return on that $50,000 to get that 50% back. And so, anyways, I had read a book about 2001, and sometimes it takes a while for us to put into action some of the things that we learned, but it really transformed the way that I thought. And that book was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And it got me thinking about the importance of diverse income streams and cash flow. And so that was really coupled with a couple of those stock market experiences, some of the driving factors that really pushed me to get into investing into real estate.
Okay. So that really pushed you to investing into real estate, right? The what happens, those magical moments after you finish Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or probably about halfway through the book, is when the brain starts catching on fire and like, wow, why didn't anybody tell me this? At the same time, you mentioned that you modeled the behaviors that you saw before you, right? Which you'd seen in your, you talked about your parents, but I'm sure that there were other people that were around you. We're surrounded by people that are doing this all the time. I guess, what was it that gave you the strength, Ben, to go from everything that you'd been taught, your surroundings, to then start to take that theory and put it into practice from the things that you were learning or that you learned in Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and really, it was challenging, sort of, but I knew that I'd been working for 10 plus years at the time, and I knew that while I was investing hard, I was maxing out my 401k. I was doing all the right things. I didn't see my income dramatically changing. And then I also thought about, we had our first child in 2012. And I got to thinking about, what's the best way to teach my children? And it's really, you learn through action. And so I thought, I read this book in 2001. I've thought about investing in real estate all these years. I've not done it. And there's no better way to learn than to just do it. And so I got to really thinking about, what are the things that I want to teach my children? And also, what's the best way to learn? And so I just decided that it was time to really learn and put into practice some of the things that I'd read, because it's one thing to read it, but it's another thing to do it. And I'm just so thankful that I did take that leap and, just take action. And I think sometimes that, the faster that we can take action, the faster we can get to results on the other side.
Definitely a believer in that, being able to take more action. The more repetitions, the faster that you can get to the end result, right? And the mistakes that you're going to make them as a result of taking action, not as a result of reading books. Very interesting to understand that you took behaviors that you saw before you, and now you are modeling new behaviors for your children, right? As if they don't end up being in the outfield for the for the Royals, then hey, you know what? They will have seen from their parents the actual behaviors that that are going to help them to get to a level of financial freedom even faster and even sooner. So, would you say, Ben, that that you're looking more to, because I always hear that you're either running towards something or you're running away from something. Where do you feel you sit on that spectrum as it's getting you closer and closer to the real asset world?
Well, I think that the world is constantly changing, and we live in this really dynamic environment where it can seem very scary, very challenging. But if we're not adapting and growing with the world, then it's kind of like a muscle. You're either getting stronger or you're getting weaker. You never stay the same. And so for me, I saw the fact that I knew that if and there's a lot of principles that we can talk about as far as diversifying risk and things like that. But I knew that if I didn't diversify my income streams, that I was putting myself and my family at risk in the future. And that I was also missing out potentially on a bunch of knowledge, relationships, and benefits that I could pass on to my children by just continuing to do the same thing. And so for me, it just was of crucial importance to make sure that I was constantly pushing myself to grow and to learn and to think about how do I diversify some of these income streams so that I'm not just tied to necessarily my W-2 job or the stock market, and that I'm thinking through how do we balance all these things? How do I learn? How do I grow? And then along the way, I can't tell you how much I've learned, and it's been a lot of fun.
And so you talk about being able, aside from having a lot of fun and learning things, and you talked about the knowledge, you talked about the relationships, and you talked about a lot of the different benefits that have derived. You also talked about, and we talked about this in the beginning, I mean, you're still working not just any day job, like a really demanding role in the sales profession, one that I happen to love a lot as well. But Ben, talk to us about how is it managing and balancing being successful in your sales profession, at the same time being able to add value to your investors that you are creating value for today. Like, just, yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, it's been an evolution. And I think there are things that I learned in my sales job and even in my corporate job that have helped me grow and move into helping serve investors. And really the fundamental of that, and one of the things that I think is a big platform for Robert Kiyosaki, is just the power of the team. And I think that by constantly pushing myself to think through what are the things that both I'm uniquely qualified to do, and also what are the things that I'm good at, but then how can I get help? And if a lot of times I like to say, when there's a will, there's a way. So if you want to do something, you're generally going to figure out how to go and do it. And so it was important to me to both learn these things and to grow. And as you know, there's only 24 hours in a day, but by investing and learning slowly, and I've done that through a variety of ways, through reading, games, getting involved with local investment groups, things of that nature, allowed me to kind of start stepping into this world and building the team. And so without the team, none of this would be possible.
I love that question that you said, how can I get help as it relates to a team to be able to optimize the amount of time that is available in a day so you can ultimately derive value for others. And you also mentioned that in order to kind of build the team, you talked about some of the different things. You talked about playing games, you talked about reading, and you talked about investment groups. I want to dig into more about how do you go about building your teams? Maybe if you could give us some specific examples of actually building that team, what that means, and then how are like reading, games, and investment groups getting you closer to building the team that's going to perform for you?
Yeah, I think it starts with identifying what's the goal and being very clear about what the goal is. And then it's networking and building your relationships in order to find who can help support you and who's aligned in your network along the way. Because I think it's real important to be in in the same environment or that have the same sort of trajectory as your team. And the only way to do that, it can seem very intimidating at first, but the only way to do it is take it one step at a time. And so, for example, when I got into my first rental property, it was very intimidating. It was like, well, how are we going to do this? We need to put it on the market. We got to collect rents. We got to do all these things. But then, I talked to some local real estate agents. We reached out, and then we found a property management company. So one of the very first people on my team was my property manager. And so instantly I started to see the benefits of, hey, I may only have 8 to 10 to 12 hours in a workday, but if I add this property manager, then they can do all these things for me. They can put the property on the market. They can make sure that the tenant's in there. They can take calls, and they have all these systems that are already in place that I was able to take the benefit of. And for me, that's just one example of building the team and then evaluating how's that working. Is the output in line with where we want to go? And then once we get that process going, how do we build upon it?
I love that. So you're looking, you talked about being aligned. So you're looking for alignment and you're figuring out how that works. And then you didn't say to do it perfectly the first time. You said to get started.
Absolutely. Right.
And then once you get started, then you fine tune so that you get to a point where whatever that process is optimized. So love that thinking as well. And I think about that a lot as well, right? When you're in a corporate job, you're thinking, wow, if the fact that I'm here allows the person that actually founded this company to do whatever it is that they're doing right now. Why? Because the process works really, really well. Or process if you're in Europe. So then I love the fact that you've already taken that into what you're doing at BMD Investment Group. And maybe you could talk to us a little bit about that, because I know in one of the things that we love to talk about here on the Going Long podcast is really investing beyond your backyard. Now, you talked about being in Oklahoma. I know that you are frequently looking at new types of opportunities that are once again aligned with you. So maybe talk to us about how having that strong team allows you to look at opportunities that are geographically in different places.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once we can kind of get things moving here, for example, last year, I believe it was, I had some investors that were interested in a project down in Jacksonville. And so we flew out to Jacksonville, met with just a world-class property management company down there, and kind of toured the market. And we were able to put together a full kind of market report down in Jacksonville. And while we ended up not moving forward with that investment, I think there was a ton of lessons learned in that, because what we learned is that the market was right. The investment was a great investment. It was just, we weren't in a spot where we were ready to move forward with that. But that's just one example. I mean, we've looked at properties in Belize. We've looked at Jacksonville. We've looked at Tulsa, Oklahoma. We've looked at Houston. We've looked at Boise. So, the benefit is once you start getting these systems in place, you can really take them to any geography that makes sense, as long as you're focused on building the team, building the relationships, and focused on the principles.
Wow. So, you really having the right team. You come back to this theme of alignment over and over, and being able to understand that you have similar goals, similar principles to be able to derive value, whether you've been taking it to an international scope, which is something that's music to my ears, to our ears as well. So then let's maybe so understanding that the team provides you with the opportunity to go to different places. And I know that you're working more and more with investors through your syndication. And I'm going to assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, that 100% of your investors are not all there in your backyard. So maybe talk to us from the point of view of people that aren't actually living in the same city where the particular project could go. Like, what are some of the things that you can do to add value for, somebody who's maybe living in a different country or on the East Coast of the United States?
Yeah, this is something that we're constantly challenging ourselves this year to do and to both get better at. And kind of like you spoke about earlier, where there's always opportunity to get better. But one of the things that we're really focused on is how do we build education and awareness of some of the things that we see, and how can those things potentially benefit other investors, whether that's in a different city, a different state, a different country. And we primarily try to focus on how can we serve our investors and connect those investors to the needs of a local community. And we do that through educating these investors really on what I like to call the four principles, which is appreciation, cash flow, tax benefits, and capital protection. And so there are a lot of different things happening in the world, like shifts in demographics, changes in money supply, things of that nature. And what we try to do is help educate how can real assets benefit those investors. And the beauty of the day and age I've never been more excited of that we live in is that we can use technologies like Zoom, we can publish reports, we can get on the phone, and we can talk to anybody across the world. And it's incredibly powerful because I often will learn more talking with individuals like you in Barcelona and getting to understand what's going on in Spain, what's going on in Europe, and then how are those things interconnected in the world, and what can we learn from that, and really give our investors here in the United States the benefit of that knowledge. So I think those are just a couple of the things that we do to try to educate people, and again, building our network so that we can add value to our investors and those that we engage with based on the community that we're connected with.
So thinking about number one, you talked about how you can serve your investors, how you can also make sure that you're aligned and building a community that can serve your investors, and then also being able to look at things like technology and how that can once again allow you to expand your community, your potential community, even further. So the fact that you're doing this is phenomenal because it adds value, well, once again, to your community and to your investors. And one of the things that I do want us to spend some time on, you've already alluded to it a bit in terms of BMD Investment Group, what your focus is. We know how you're starting to educate or how you're educating your community now. And you talked to us about the four different areas or the four different benefits that can be derived, but maybe just give us a bit more of a flavor of BMD Investment Group, where your focus is, and also, what your focus is.
Sure. So originally our focus was, hey, how can we, because like I said, we want to solve problems in communities and help solve problems for our investors. And so originally the thought there was, living in Oklahoma, a predominant oil and gas capital of America, was how do we provide housing to oil and gas workers that may come into Oklahoma City but not want to purchase a property because they may not live here for 10 years. They may live here for a couple of years. So that was the original idea. But we have to always stay on our toes and open to changes. And so while we still think that there's going to be an opportunity for that in the future, we're constantly pushing ourselves to grow, evolve, and learn. And so one of the things that really we're looking at very closely now is just the shift in demographics just across the world. And we're seeing that the population continues to get older and older. And so one of the things that we're exploring right now is a very fast growing area of the economy, which is residential assisted living. And so we're starting to see, and this is a bit of a personal story with my wife, but when her mother needed some assisted living, we struggled to find a good assisted living home for her. And so based on that experience and then what we're seeing with the demographics, she became very passionate about wanting to serve the community in that way. And so we're looking very heavily into offering some assisted living investments to our investors as an opportunity to provide a safer and affordable alternative to assisted living care.
Wow. So really focused once again on bringing value, educating your customer base, your client base. And once again, there's a story of understanding and looking to solve a unique problem and being able to build out and not only solve that issue for the communities in which you look to deploy capital and the relationships that you have, but also for the individual. So I think that is in the issues that they're having, and you're looking to solve the problem. But at the end of the day, then it always comes back to problem solving and being able to do that and help so many people because you're understanding what it is that they want. And I think that's phenomenal. Ben, I want to keep talking to you forever. The reality is, you said it earlier, time is limited. So there is a part of the show that I like to get to that I'm calling the going long final three. But the thing is, Ben, I never ask the going long final three unless you tell me that you're actually ready for me to ask you the going long final three. Are you ready, Ben?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Here we go. All right, Ben, the first question in the going long final three is, I live here in Barcelona. I really love living over here. It's awesome. And I know you lived in Europe as well. We'll have to have you back on so you can tell us more about those stories. But I would love for you to share with us, what is your favorite European city, either that you have visited or is still on your bucket list?
Man, this is so tough.
We could
probably do a podcast on all of the European cities that I love. But I think the most fascinating for me that we've been to is Medina and Malta. Oh. And we found that city was just the history, the blown glass. It really was unlike anywhere that I'd ever been. And I would say Medina and Malta.
Medina. Okay. Awesome. Well, that's the first vote for Medina. Fantastic. Awesome. And yes, Ben, because I wanted you to share your European living in Europe stories on another episode, but we'll come back to that. Second, all right. Ben, you have both on the corporate side and in your real estate as an entrepreneur, syndicator, you've had a lot of success, right? And so along the path to success, there usually are some trials and tribulations, call them mistakes, call them whatever you want. And you even talked about it earlier. It's what do you learn from those mistakes, those lessons? And I would love for you to just share one lesson that you think would be important for our going long audience to take from a mistake that you made. So maybe they don't have to pay 100% full price.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think one of the things that might be challenging for a lot of folks is they think, man, I could never do this, or it just seems so complicated. And to be honest, even though that I talked about the team and the property management and all that, I think one of my biggest lessons learned is not investing in the team early enough, trying to go at it alone. Because really, I always was trying to wrap my mind around, hey, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And I would just get spinning and stuck, and I wouldn't take action. And so I think by not focusing on asking the question, how can I get help and how can I build a team? That's probably my biggest lesson learned. And just to add to that, I think one of the things that was always in my head with the team was, well, I can't afford that. I can't afford that. And I think you and I hit on that a little bit earlier, which is it's not I can't, but how can I? And I think once you start thinking through that lens, then there is always a way in which you can invest in your education. Once you invest in your education, you get a little bit more experience. Once you invest in your education, you can build your network. When you build your network, that starts to open up the opportunities. And then it becomes a cycle that will produce fruit in the long run.
Definitely. Love that. And yes, the question is, how can you do something? Love that, Ben. And the last question is, what book are you recommending?
Well, you've heard me say this a couple times today. I think while there's so many books, and I love reading. I try to read constantly. The Probably the book most recently that reframed everything for me that I think a lot about was Principles by Ray Dalio. And just the importance of thinking through both transparency and writing down what in fact are principles versus tactics, and when do you need principles, when do you need tactics, and how do those inform the decisions that you make. And so Principles by Ray Dalio.
Fantastic. Principles. I was reading that book in Maui on the beach with my wife a couple months back, and then things happened around the world, and we've been locked in for quite a while. But okay, another one for Mr. Dalio. Principles. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. Listen, Ben, we've talked about so many things. You've really given us some great insight. You've helped us understand, from as a young kid, being able to have a goal and dream and starting, I mentioned at the beginning at 14, and then you went to university and you were able to accomplish things. You're studying in your finance, and then you realized that once you were on that path that you were maybe missing a little something. And so you started to take the decisions into your own hands and really started taking action. And as a result of that action, not only have you took the lessons from 2000, you took the lessons from 2008, and you've been able to put yourself, your family, now your investors in a position where you're able to benefit from the fruits of your labor and really keeping things moving, understanding that even with a very demanding day job, you're still able to do that and add value through BMD Investment Group for many other people's, really focused on the team, really focused on alignment, which provides you with opportunities literally around the globe. So I really appreciate you sharing that. The fact that you've shared this with me, with all of our audience. You know what, Ben? I'm sure everyone's like, well, yeah, Billy, yeah. Well, get to the point, Billy. Just ask him. Okay, so I'm going to ask you. I know I want to keep talking to you. I know that there are lots of other people that would love to be in contact with you and with your team. So if you could help us understand, what is the best way to get in touch with you and your team, Ben?
The absolute simplest way, and thank you for asking, is go to www.bmdinvest.com, and I will make sure that you've got that URL that you can put in the show notes. And folks can go out there. If they'd like to get a little bit more info, they can hit the contact us, and we will, just for your listeners, I'd be happy to provide them with a market report of Oklahoma City and how demographics are informing some of the investment opportunities that we see moving forward. And so if they're interested in either of those things, if they just go to bmdinvest.com, then click the contact button, we'll be happy to provide them with one of those reports.
Fantastic. So thank you for that, Ben. And once again, Ben recommended it. I'm going to say go there, bmdinvest.com. And one of the things to keep in mind, Ben is providing the opportunity to look at Oklahoma City in his market report. This report can serve you even if you're not in Oklahoma City. It's the fact that he is providing you with an opportunity to look at some of the different metrics that are going to be relevant. So Ben, I really appreciate you providing that to our audience. That's awesome. And everybody, when you get in touch with Ben, let him know, hey, listen, Ben, I heard you on the Going Long podcast. And then that way he knows that he helped you and is adding value to you. So I know it's a big focus for you, Ben. So my friend, listen, I want to say thank you. And I do thank you for taking the time to stop here to share your experience, your expertise, your insights with the Going Long audience. And I hope to have you back again, man. Thank you.
Well, Billy, thank you. I appreciate the offer, and I just really appreciate all the information that you're sharing with your platform. So thank you very much.
All right. Fantastic. And listen, Going Long audience, once again, another awesome guest, lots of value. I want to thank you as well for joining us, for listening. We'd love to get your feedback. And you know what? Also, as we're getting started, feel free to share this with at least 2 or 3 other friends so that we can continue to build our community, our platform with other like-minded people, so we can continue to attract awesome guests like Ben to the show. And I just really want to thank you for that. And at the same time, if you feel like giving us some feedback, a written review, 5-star review, we're always going to love that. But just want to get your written review so we can know how we can continue to add more value to you, very much in line with what Ben was talking about earlier. And you know what? I am so looking forward to welcoming you back to the next episode. And until then, go out and make it a great day. Thanks, everyone. Wow, don't you love hearing from top-notch experts in the field? You know, when I was getting started, I really wish that I would have had access to such experts. And even more, I wish they would have given me like a really simple list of things to follow so that I could have gotten to my goals much faster and been much happier even sooner. So that's why I've created for you the 7 things that you should avoid in order to be successful in long-distance investing. And you can pick that up really easily by going to billykeels.com/7 things to avoid. And also, if you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a 5-star review. I'm looking forward to seeing you on our very next episode, so go out and make it a great day.